Oh yeah, it does. Look at that. If I set it to be -1, it just completely removes all of the color from the contrast. And I actually do really like how this looks. This is pretty cool. Alright, so I know this will be a shocker to literally everybody who's watching this, but numbers, right? So like 1 to 30, for example, are often used as values. And I know this is shocking, but for example, right? If I want to change the size of the spawn location, so let's say I'm trying to make a game or whatever, right? If I want to change the size of the spawn location, I will have to do so by using numbers, right? If I want to change the height, I have to set the number higher, so I have to say like 10 or something. And now the height is 10 blocks, right? Or if I set it to be 2, now it's 2 blocks, or 3 blocks, or 4 blocks. So this is already a massive amount of information flowing in your head, I'm sure. But I'll reiterate it once again, numbers are used to store values. And Roblox, and I'm sure a lot of other game engines too, try to restrict what you're actually allowed to put. So like, for example, right, if I wanted to change the size to something insane, I can't really do that because Roblox has a size limit. And no matter how hard I try to go past that size limit, it will just never really let me. And the same is true for something like the transparency or the reflectance of the item. As you can see here, there is a scrolling bar, right? So I can scroll all the way from, 0 to 1. But that's as far as it actually lets me scroll, right? I can't scroll to 2 or I can't scroll to -1. It just doesn't let me do that. Well, what if there was somehow a way to take these numbers and to set them to a high number anyway? Like, what if I wanted to take the transparency of the part and set it to something crazy like 9,999, right? Like, that would be insane, right? And you can actually do that. And I just realized that I didn't select the spawn location, I selected the base plate, but whatever. If I hit enter here, it allows us to keep it. As you can see right now, the official transparency of the base plate is 9,999. And I can prove this by trying to print it, right? So if I print, workspace, base plate, transparency, look at that, right? So it's legit. So this isn't some, visual glitch or whatever. And the other thing too is that I could also try setting it to a negative number. -1, -10,000. As you can see, all of this is actually allowed. However, with something like transparency, if transparency is set to 0, it's going to be fully solid. If I set it to -1, it's going to be fully solid, right? Transparency is a very boring property in that regard, right? It can only really go from 0 to 1, and that's about it. Any number higher just doesn't really do anything. So is there any property that allows us to go past the limit while also changing something that we previously weren't able to change? This is where we get to this amazing little item called the color correction effect. In case you don't know, color correction is a way for you to modify how the game looks for all players or some specific player. For example, you can change the brightness of your game. You can also change the contrast of your game, like so. And you can change the saturation, making it more colorful or completely devoid of color. And then there's also the tint color, which kind of changes how, colorful the game is, but that doesn't really matter right now. As you can see, brightness, contrast, and saturation all have these bars as well, right? So then what would happen if I were to take something like contrast, just hypothetically, right? And set it to be above its limit. Oh wow. So yeah, this is not something you can get with one contrast. Look at that difference. Holy. So as you just saw, we have contrast, we have brightness, and we have saturation, right? And we can take these numbers and effectively set them as high as we want. So let's play around with something like brightness, right? If I set brightness to be 1, then it seems like it doesn't actually go any further, right? I mean, if I set brightness to be 1, it's just a fully white screen, right? I mean, look at that. There's really not much that we can do here. However, if I were to change the contrast actually makes things darker. So for example, if I were to set the contrast to be something really high, like this, then I can actually change the brightness, right? Look at that. So what ends up happening is that we get a result that looks like this. Look at the textures. Look at how grainy this looks. Isn't that interesting? And also just take a quick look at the spawn location. Look at the black design. Look at it. Look at how there's like these weird like colored outlines around it. And it looks like they're almost moving in a way. Look at that. That is so interesting. Now, okay, what about something like saturation? Because we haven't really covered that yet. Now, in case you don't know, saturation, like I said before, is just a way to bring out more vibrant colors, right? So for example, right now, it looks kind of gray, but the base plate has a bit of blue to it, just a little bit. And so what saturation does is it takes that blue and amplifies it. So it lets the colors be more vibrant and amazing and whatever. So then with the saturation, I could do something like this. And 99 seems to be already enough. And what we get is this cyan, greenish, mint looking color. And what this means then is that this is the tint of the base plate. If I remove the saturation, it means that the area inside of Roblox Studio is actually a very faint mint color. And look at that. Again, it creates this weird grainy texture. And it also looks like something is reflecting as well. Look at that. So the closer I get, it changes like that. That is so interesting. And something interesting is that as opposed to the saturation, this doesn't actually have any outlines, which is very interesting. So, okay, then we have those, right? And we can definitely do more things with them than, what I've just done. But what if I wanted to, let's say, decrease numbers? Because right now we're just changing them to be a lot, right? But what if we change them to be a little? Is that even allowed? So with something like the contrast, right? As you can see, if I go here, it turns into this weird, just blank gray color, right? What if I do negative 1.1 then? Look at that. 1.2. Do you see that? It inverts the colors. So then let me try doing this. That is so interesting. I bet you actually didn't know that this was a built-in feature into Roblox. If I play the game right now, look at that. My character is, whoa, look at that. A white shadow, black sunray. My avatar is also completely inverted as well. That is so cool. So that's very interesting how it does that, right? Like if we set it to be a high regular number, it just makes all of the existing colors pop. But here it does the same thing, but in inverse, right? So it inverses the colors. That is very cool. Now, what if we try this for the saturation? Because what saturation does, a lack of saturation, is it just removes all color, basically. It just makes everything this grayish mess. Well, let's see. What if we do negative 1.1? Or 0.2, or 0.3, or 0.4, or 0.5? I don't know if it's just me, but I'm seeing a slight difference in... Oh yeah, look at that. Is it doing the same thing? Is it going to invert the colors? I suppose we can just immediately see. Oh wow. So saturation seems to be doing what it's done before, but this time it's weird because it's like kind of reversing the colors, but also not really. I mean, look, my headphones, right? They're usually golden, and here they're this like blue-purple color, which I do quite like. But then my shadow is still darker, the spawn location is still white, and this design is still black. And my character is also normal, right? I mean, the texture looks really weird, but like the black and the white are, in the correct spots in the texture. And the sun is also white as well, right? That's a very big thing. So that's very interesting. How does the saturation decide what to invert and what to not? I suppose this means that the saturation only changes certain colors and leaves others be. I'm not actually too sure as to how this process of negative saturation works, but this is really interesting to me. And now let's try and combine all of these. What if I take the contrast? What if I take the saturation? Oh wow. And what if I take the brightness? Yep, just immediately we're left with this weird looking thing. And we have the sun still, it's still there. If I were to play the game, oh wow. Yeah, no, this is literally just a built-in filter into Roblox. Look at that. Your games could look like this too. Oh, and look how like much of the reflection captures on the headphones, right? Because my headphones reflect stuff. But here it's like, it's reflecting it in pure solid colors. And by the way, if I were to disable this is what it usually looks like, right? Look at that. Everything is fine. But then if I enable this now, what the hell? And then, okay, another test. What happens if we make one of these values positive and the other negative? So let's do let's start off with a negative saturation, okay? Oh, interesting. So saturation seems to take priority, kind of. Oh yeah, it does. Look at that. If I set it to be -1, it just completely removes all of the color from the contrast. And I actually do really like how this looks. This is pretty cool. And then yeah, if I set it to be something like -1.1, oh, look at that. The middle area is still black, but the surrounding area is inverted. That's a very cool effect. I really like that. But then, okay, what if we do negative with the contrast, okay? What if we say -9? Oh, interesting. And then if I were to change the brightness to be negative as well, so it does still invert the colors, I believe. Yeah, it does. But then when you get to here, it stops inverting them. Yeah, look at it. If I position my camera at the right angle, it seems like my head is almost turning back to the original color. Or actually, no, this could be just, yeah, the rays from the sun. Yeah, that looks terrifying. Holy. So, there's the color correction for you. If I just disable this, yeah, we're back to looking boring. But we're back home. You know what? I like this a lot better than whatever this is. So, that's the color correction. Now, I will use it later in the video, so I'll just delete it for now. But I want to show you two other properties which I found to be really interesting. So if I were to make a part, right, as you can see, we can change the transparency, right, the usual stuff, but we can also change the reflectance. And reflectance simply implies its reflectance on whatever the skybox is. So this doesn't actually mean that the part now becomes a mirror, right? Because if I were to, let's say, jump above the part, you can see it doesn't actually mirror me. We can't really see myself. Like, I cannot see myself on top of the part. Because what reflection does is, like I said, it simply reflects whatever the skybox is, right? Like so. So then, what if I were to change this value to be higher than 1? And immediately look at that. It makes some weird glow thing, which changes depends on where you look at it. Yeah, so if I'm over here, it's like this like weird cyan, purple, black, white, green, yellowish mix of colors. And I can assume that what's going on is that it's actually reflecting the skybox, but just in a very saturated way. And yeah, so in-game, it actually looks exactly like that, right? Look at that. That is interesting. But then what if we wanted to change reflectance to be a negative number? How would that work? And unfortunately, it actually doesn't do anything, because when you don't reflect, you don't reflect. And no matter how hard you don't reflect something, you still don't reflect, so nothing actually really changes. It's the same issue with transparency, right? However, transparency, while not entirely working on parts, seems to have an interesting effect on textures and decals. So a decal is just an image that you can place on a part, right? So, this black, icon is a decal. If I were to remove it, now it's gone, right? And decals have their own transparency property, right? So it can either be fully visible or fully invisible. And so this is where we can mess around with the numbers. Why does it do that? So if I make it a negative number, which means making it less transparent, it causes the texture to have this like weird, blocky, distorted look. Almost like as if it's attempting to add more to the texture. But then what if I did a positive number instead of a negative? Well, in this case, nothing really happens, right? It's just gone. This change only occurs with a negative number. And in that case, it creates this weird blocky look. And the texture of the base plate also has a very similar issue. Now, if I just set it to be like 999, it doesn't do anything because it's already invisible. But then if I set it to be negative 999, it has the same issue. Although I'll admit it's not really visible here because, this design has like, these like rounded corners. But this design is already blockish, so there's not really anything to notice. However, if I happen to, zoom past, look at that, right? You can see that. Like these weird like little blocks in the corner. And you can also see that if I set the transparency back to be normal, you see how it becomes thinner, right? Like this is how it usually looks like, and this is how it looks like with a negative number. It widens itself. So that is an effect of transparency on textures that I've noticed that I think looks really weird. And this is something I believe I could also do for my own character. Although actually, in the case of my character, it uses something called a surface appearance, which does not have a transparency property. So unfortunately, we can't really do anything. We can change the transparency of the part, but that's also not really gonna do anything. So yeah, I suppose our characters are safe for now. Now, really quickly, here's just some stuff that doesn't really seem to work with these high numbers. So terrain, you know, stuff like grass length, water reflectance, transparency, wave size, colors. I've tried all of it. I've made terrain, I've made the water. I've done every single number that I could think of. Nothing really happens. Grass length doesn't really change. In fact, it doesn't even let me change it. It just stays here. And same thing with something like water reflectance, you know, same thing with transparency, wave size, water wave speed, blah. It just caps out at a certain point. Another thing was also GUI, you know, user interface. I couldn't really find anything fun to do with this. Like initially I was thinking like, oh yeah, I could try and change, you know, the transparency of it or like, you know, the size of it or whatever. But it just doesn't really do anything fun. Like for example, background transparency, right? Like there's just nothing here, you know, there's just nothing you can really do. And the last thing, which interested me the most, because I still have no idea what this even means or how this works. Remember how we changed the decal of the spawn location, right? So as you can see, the spawn location has a decal, and it is a decal, it says right here. And then we also changed the texture of the base plate, which is a texture, as it says right here. Well, if I were to create a rig, right, which has a face, as you can see here, which resides inside of the head. Yeah, here it is, right? So if I were to remove the face, then the face is gone. And you can see this is a decal, right? It says it right here. So just like previously, you would expect that, you know, me changing the transparency would do something, you know, to make it look distorted or whatever. But look at this, right? No matter how far I go, it looks the same. Initially, I thought that this maybe had something to do with the texture. Like maybe the spawn location comes pre-built with this texture, but then the face, like, is its own other, like, or like, I just thought that there might be a difference in the textures. But like, there literally isn't. They both come from the same folder. You look at this, right? It's a folder called textures. And this face comes from the same exact folder called textures. So I'll do a bit of improv here, but the only solution I can really think of is potentially deleting the humanoid, which then makes all of the parts less smoother, but the face still cannot be changed. You cannot change the face. I have genuinely no clue what the hell is going on. So yeah, that's some quick trivia for you. For some reason, the face of rigs doesn't work. I have no idea why. It's stupid. Maybe leave a comment, let me know. And also, while you are at it, if you have found this video very valuable and very helpful, and let's say you're a beginner, let's say you're a scripter, right? You're a beginner scripter, or maybe you're just looking to start scripting. If you want to reach like enlightenment level, like if you want to literally start like levitating while learning Roblox scripting, I have a course that does exactly that. So you'll buy the course, you'll do it, and you literally start levitating like it's crazy. Every review is amazing. I've had one bad review, but it's like in Spanish and I can't really understand it, so I consider that 0 bad reviews then, so all the reviews are positive. So yeah, if you like my teaching style and you want to learn more Roblox scripting, studio shenanigans, check out my course in the description and the pinned comment. And also follow my Instagram while you're at it. I post pigeon pictures, so I think you might like those. And so, nearing the end of the video, I did say we're going to come back to the color correction, and honestly, you know what we should do? What if I make a script, right? Yeah, let's say I make a script inside of this color correction. I make a number, right? And I'll say local num is equal to 0.1. Let's just say, for example, right? And I say while task wait 0.5 seconds. Okay, so every 0.5 seconds, what we can do is we can take this color correction, we can say script.parent. Let's say .contrast is going to be equal to the number. And we'll say script.parent.saturation is also going to be equal to the number except negative. And then we're going to say number times equals 2. So we're going to take whatever the number is and we're going to multiply it by 2. So in short, every half second, we're going to set these values to be whatever the number is, which is initially 0.1, and then we'll multiply the number by 2, so then it's going to be 0.2, so then these values are now going to be 0.2, then we're going to times it by 2 again, so then it's going to be 0.4, and this is just going to make it incrementally increase the values. So yeah, if I play the game right now, let's see, is there any noticeable change? Okay, well, I'm not really seeing much of a difference, and the script is not running. Okay. Alright, so lesson learned. I guess scripts don't like running inside of the lighting service, so what I can do is I'll just move this script inside of the workspace, and instead of saying script.parent, I'll just make a variable for it. There we go, so color correction, and now it should be changing. So let's see if I start playing the game. Oh, yep, there we go. Look at that. Oh my god. Already? Really? Wow. Okay, you know what? Let's do, let's also make the brightness the same as well. So brightness is going to be equal to num, let's say divided by 10, okay? Num divided by 10. And instead of multiplying the number by 2, let's multiply it by 1.1, okay? And I guess let's make this a bit faster. So then if I were to play the game, everything's fine. Oh, but you can see that. We're more saturated. Yeah. Okay. And I'm just walking around. You know, I'm just having fun. Something just popped up. I don't know what that is. And we are chilling. And oh my god. The only thing that remains are my weird little textures. And I think this is it. I think we've hit the limit as to what... Oh no, look at that. The sun is disappearing. Is it still removing the textures? Did it delete the sun? Look at that. I can see, like, I can see a vision of it. It's right there. Oh my god. Oh, and if I move the camera, like, right inside of my character, I can see this. Look at that. Like, if my camera is inside of my head, it shows me the sun, but it doesn't show it here. What? Yeah, this lighting stuff is confusing, bro. At least my headphones, which I paid like $200 for, are all nice and shiny. So I'm glad about that. So yeah, there we go. That was the video. I know you just learned amazing life-changing value. So again, do subscribe. You know, I post a lot of stuff like this where I just showcase dumb but pretty insane stuff at times, honestly. And I say subscribe not even because I really want more subscribers. I just want 100k because then it gives me like the silver play button or whatever. And I think it'd be really funny to take that play button. What do people even do with play buttons? Do they like put them up on the wall or something? I don't know. I need to know how big the play button is, because I might use it as like a cooking stand. You know, like I can cut my vegetables on it or something. You know, or like a cutting board, right? Like I don't have a cutting board. My parents have one, but like I don't have one. So you know, I can just cut tomatoes on it or whatever. So yeah, if you want to see me cut tomatoes on a play button, then subscribe. Get me to 100k. I'll cut tomatoes on the play button. So, you know, like I said, I hope you learned something new. Check out the course, subscribe, check out the Discord, or not, up to you. And as always, we are back to basics. Thank you for watching.